Hello and welcome to another episode of Enthusiastic Life with Brendan Walsh. I am your host and am so happy that you are here to join us for another episode. This week we have my friend Andrew Stein as our guest. He is the president and CEO of the Children's Foundation here in Detroit, Michigan. And our conversation was really interesting, getting his background, how he went from working in the law and legal industry to getting into the nonprofit world and getting into leadership and his thoughts on leadership and work that he's done and the impact that they've had and what the Children's Foundation is doing and their vision for the future and how they can impact as many lives as possible. So I thought it was a really fun, enjoyable conversation for me, and I hope you enjoy listening to it. If you do enjoy it, at the end of our episode, if you could please like, rate, comment on whatever platform you're listening to, it would do a great service in getting us out there and more people hearing what we have to talk about. So thank you again for being here, and I hope you enjoy our conversation with Andrew Stein. Andrew Stein, welcome to our podcast. So glad that you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Do you mind starting off just by introducing yourself a little bit?
Sure. My name's Andrew Stein. I am proud to serve professionally as the president and CEO of the Children's Foundation.
And tell me a little bit, what do you recall of our origin story of how we met?
So I have my version, and I hope it's the same as yours. Otherwise, I've forgotten something. But I'm pretty sure it starts with Leadership Detroit class 38, 36, because I met Kelly. Kelly was in my Leadership Detroit class.
Aren't you supposed to remember those numbers? Isn't that like really important?
We were the best class ever. Whatever the number was, we were the best class ever. This was 2016. So I met Kelly first, and she's obviously just incredibly nice, but we also were two people who had both lived in Washington, D.C., and now we were in Detroit, and we got along, and I'm pretty sure then that's how I met you.
Yeah.
The first time I met you, don't recall.
I don't remember either. I am certain it was at some Leadership Detroit thing or an event around Detroit where we ran into you and I said, "Oh, Andrew's in my Leadership Detroit."
Yes, and whoever was looking at it said, "Wow, those are two tall guys in this place."
Right, exactly. Now, but when you were in Leadership Detroit, were you still with the Children's Foundation?
No. So my story is I grew up in Franklin, Michigan. I grew up in the Detroit area. Family goes back here many, many generations. Graduated from Michigan State, moved to Washington, D.C., spent 11 years there. Moved back here in 2015, almost like 10 years to the day. And for 7 years, I led an organization called City Year that placed young people ages 17 to 24 years old in Detroit public schools for a year of full-time service. So we had about 125 what we called core members. They were deployed every single day full-time to 12 Detroit public schools, working with about 7,000 kids every day. So I did that for 7 years, and then it's been 2.5 years that I've bid the president of the Children's Foundation.
Nice. So when you were in D.C., you were attending law school. So did you take the bar, become a full attorney, the whole kit and caboodle?
Yeah, I was, did my undergrad at Michigan State, and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do coming out of undergrad, and I had been told from a very young age I should be a lawyer. You can make an argument, you're a good writer, you're good at presenting, you should be a lawyer. And I think that was easy for family, others to say, right, go be that. That's a thing you can be, a lawyer. And that's easy for us to explain to others what our son Andrew does with his life professionally. So I took the LSAT in law school. I applied to law school. I was all set to go, but this little voice in me just said, you don't want to go do more school right now, coming off of 4 years of undergrad. So I started looking at the Peace Corps, and I stumbled on this program, City Year. I actually saw an advertisement on TV, and all it really had was, it had Dr. King speaking and JFK saying, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." It just resonated with me at 22 years old. So I signed up to do this year of full-time service working in public schools in Washington, D.C. So moved there after undergrad. And that was the catalytic moment for me. That was my alarm clock. That's the thing that just showed me, just made me feel really motivated in a way that I hadn't before in my life. I always did well enough in school, but I was working 60 hours a week and making very, very little pay. And I was so happy.
Yeah.
Ended up going to law school after spending 2 years working in public schools in DC, and spent some time at a law firm. But this voice in me just said, I want to get back to that type of work and that feeling that I had at 22, 23 when I was working in public schools in DC. And that's when the opportunity presented itself to come back home and lead City Year here in Detroit.
So going from, what's it like, what's that moment when you've gone to law school, you've invested, I mean, that's a significant investment of time and resources, right? I mean, having friends in law school, I know what that like study process, I mean, it's rigorous, right? What's that moment? What's that feel like when you're at that law firm in DC, right? You've started that journey, right? And to go from that to say, no, this isn't my calling. I want to go in another direction. What's that moment like?
I think a few things that I remember feeling and thinking at the time. One is the national average. It's about 1 in 250 people have a law degree across the country. In Washington, D.C., 1 in 12 people have a law degree. It's the highest concentration of lawyers by far.
Right.
Most of those people are not practicing law in a traditional sense. They're coming in and out of government, they're leading nonprofit organizations, or they're doing something that has nothing to do with the law. So I think I saw a lot of people that had law degrees, but at some point left the practice to go do something else. So that idea didn't feel like a huge pivot, at least relative to where I was. I think, again, to my folks in Michigan, it was, but he hasn't made partner yet. He should just stick around for 20 more years until he makes partner, and then he can go do something else. To me, no. What I look back on and I wish is that someone had spent more time with me, not talking about what I wanted to be, but what I wanted to do. Right? Lawyer, again, is a thing you can be. Doctor is a thing. What I don't think young people often think a lot about is, yeah, but what is that? Like, what is it you're doing every day? And are those activities motivating to you? And I wish that someone had said, look, lawyer is a great job. There's a way to make a great living. This is what a lawyer does every day. And if someone had told me it's a lot of sitting at your desk, it's a lot of research, it's a lot of writing. Yeah, it's interacting with people, but it's often around a period of conflict in their lives. If I had then reflected on, what are the things in my life that I had done that were really motivating, right? That City Year experience or teams I was on or volunteer experiences I had in high school, I would have seen that there wasn't a lot of alignment between what a lawyer does every day and what I knew I liked to do. So I learned that lesson at, in my late 20s. I spent enough time in practice to pay off my loans. We put a down payment on a house, all of that. I did a lot
in DC?
Yeah. I wish I had bought 4 at the time.
Don't get me started on that. That's a touchy subject.
But that, then leading City Year, where every year I had 125, mostly college graduates coming into our program, there were always, at least 10 that said they wanted to go to law school. And I would meet with that group early in the year. I would buy them pizza in the office. And my goal was always to talk at least 1 or 2 of them out of going to law school and try to teach them the lesson that, quite frankly, like I learned after law school. Now, all that said, I do not begrudge, a Georgetown law degree, the skills it taught me, the way law school trains you to think and write and analyze. And I feel like every day I'm out there making the case for the Children's Foundation. And I think I have a sharper skill set because I had that legal background. So I don't begrudge it.
Well, and in having those conversations with those students, then they're going to, if they do decide that they're going to go to law school, they know they really want to, right? Because they've been given the full picture of, they may have whatever vision that they have of being an attorney, whether it's in the courtroom or advocating for this or that, but knowing the inner workings of that'll let them know that they're going into it with clear eyes of what it's going to look like.
That's right. Exactly. Yep. And that's just what I wanted that group every year to understand. And there were people who was like, no, I'm going to law school.
There you go. So tell me about the transition from City Year to Children's Foundation. How did that all happen?
Yeah. So I moved home, led City Year at a period of time where Detroit Public Schools was still under emergency management. There was a question of whether the school district was going to be the next to enter bankruptcy after the city had come out of bankruptcy. A lot of uncertainty and an operation here that was kind of struggling financially. Within 4 or 5 years, sounds kind of corny to say, but there are 29 City Year sites around the country. City Year Detroit got the award for Best City Year Site. So, me and my team were going and working with City Year in New York and Seattle and the Bay Area about how to be more like City Year Detroit from an impact standpoint and just like financial stability. So we had felt like, my team and I felt like we could do anything. And every single week, stuff came up. Like when you work with 7,000 kids in Detroit Public School, there's always some fire to put out each week. We always joked if it hadn't happened by like noon on Friday, it meant we were working late because it was going to happen Friday afternoon.
Right.
But we kind of felt like Neo at the end of the Matrix, where like everything's just moving kind of slowly at you, and you just feel like we know how to handle these situations, know how to manage any crisis that's thrown our way. And my team and I talked about that, and I sort of said, look, I think I'm ready to look for something that is a bit more of a challenge. You all are running this. I think it's time for me to pass this on to someone else. And then that was like January 2020. And then a pandemic hit. And we were like, okay, here's a new challenge. We haven't had to deal with this. Are we up for this? And within, a month or so, it was clear that we were already part of the school district's response to COVID strategy. We were in virtual classrooms. In many cases, we were running the virtual classrooms because we had 125, 22 and 23-year-olds who were really tech savvy in the way some teachers weren't. So we kind of got over that. And then I said, okay, now let me start looking. And, I've had this a few times in my career where I go back to, I think, my dad, who probably said, okay, you did the City Year thing now for 7 years, time to get a real job, right? And in my mind, it was, no, I'd like to stay in, for impact work, ideally in this area, ideally something around kids. And so this position at the Children's Foundation became available, and I knew our board chair, Lou Ann Thomas Ewald, and I remember grabbing her at Mackinac and saying, hey, I think I might be interested in this job. Let me tell you all the reasons why I'm not a good fit. And I listed off the 3 or 4 things that I thought were the reasons why I wasn't the right fit. And she said, yep, I hear you. Don't worry about that. Okay, yeah, think about that, but absolutely you should apply. And so went through the process, and the more I learned about the entity, the more I got interested in the history of the Children's Foundation, and then what I thought this place could be in this community.
Nice. So tell me more about what drew you to the Children's Foundation? And then I'm curious, in your 2.5 years, what are the things that you're particularly excited about that you've accomplished so far? And then where the organization is and things that you're working on now. Yeah.
So I have yet to find our exact peer anywhere in the country. And I've talked to a few dozen entities that are somewhat close to ours, but no one exactly on point. So our history at the Children's Foundation goes back to 1886, when the Children's Hospital in Michigan started here. In 2011, the Detroit Medical Center sold, of which Children's Hospital was a part. There was a question, because the hospital sold, it converted from a nonprofit to a for-profit entity. So one of the considerations is, what happens to all the philanthropic money that has been given to the hospital? It cannot transfer over to a for-profit entity. So the Children's Foundation was created and inherited about $80 million from Children's Hospital. We are totally separate from the hospital, no legal affiliation. We are the stewards of those funds that have been built by thousands and thousands of generous families, companies, foundations in this community going back over 140 years. What is interesting about what the board decided to do is they, instead of just becoming a private foundation, the way the Kresge Foundation is, or Skillman Foundation, or choosing to just spend down that $80 million and shutter the place, the board made a decision of let's continue to operate as a public charity and let's leverage the generosity of this community to continue building resources to support the needs of kids. That can be things that are taking place at a hospital or things that are preventing kids from entering the hospital.
Yeah.
So, to me, this is a really interesting platform to build an institution that will serve kids in this community today, tomorrow, and 100 years from now, and take a really, really long-term view on philanthropy and how people give and what resources can enable. So, the three things that we are most focused on at the Children's Foundation, one is building the community's endowment for kids. The $80 million we inherited from the hospital is almost all endowed, which means it's going to be here to meet the needs of kids today, tomorrow, and forever. We've grown that now to about $166 million.
Wow.
I want to be at $300 to $400 million. I want, my kids and grandkids, our kids and grandkids to know that the Children's Foundation is going to be an entity that is just an institution in this community and is meeting the needs of kids. So it's really fun and exciting and motivating to think on a really long-term time horizon, especially in this industry where most organizations out of necessity have to think about raising those annual dollars and trying to raise one more dollar than they spend every year. Yeah. And we get to say, by all means, support organizations that you love and care about in that way. Let's also think about how we're seeding something and building something in this community that's going to be here for forever.
Yeah.
So that's one. Two is we're helping organizations become more durable by helping nonprofit organizations start and grow their own endowments. Very rare, like hospitals, universities, large institutions, all have endowments, right? It's the lifeblood of these large organizations. Rarely, if ever, do smaller community-based social change organizations have endowed capital, right? They're raising their annual money. They might run a capital campaign when they're building a building, but rarely do they have something that is perpetual and provides them annual income. We work with organizations to help them start and grow their own endowment so that they can have that source of capital as well. And then the last thing we do is, we work with individuals, families, sometimes companies, sometimes other foundations to provide sort of tailored philanthropic services. So this often looks like we'll be the back of the house for a family that wants to start a foundation, but doesn't want to have to do everything to start a foundation, right? Legal, accounting, all the sort of public nature of things you have to disclose. So we'll be kind of the back of the house and be their partner in their charitable efforts.
Nice. So what are some of the things that you're most excited about that you guys are accomplishing in those three areas right now?
Yeah, I'll say on the nonprofit endowment front. So a year and a half ago, we got the opportunity to work with Bill and Lisa Ford on the opening of Michigan Central Station. And they came to us and said, the station is opening. We want to do something philanthropic, but it's got to meet the moment of what this station represents. We really want to do something different. And so the idea that we developed with them was, what does that station represent in this community? It is its impact, its innovation, and it's forever. That train station is never going back to the condition that it was in, right? Can we say it's going to be here forever in that condition? Can we say the same things about organizations that serve tens of thousands of kids in this community? And the answer is no, because they all live year to year for the most part. How do we change that? We create endowment for them. So we embarked on a campaign and put together a committee that from really January 2024 until June 6, 2024, so a year ago when that station opened, we set out to raise $10 million. We raised $19.2 million from over 300 donors in this community. We took that money, we put out an open call for people to serve on the selection committee. We had 16 community leaders and 44 young people that reviewed applications from 104 youth-serving organizations in this area and eventually chose 11 organizations that now each have a $1.5 million endowment established for their benefit at the Children's Foundation. Wow. So, we've had moments in our city, we'll have a big initiative or a big event, and we're a very generous community, so there's often a philanthropic component, but it's very often some money was given out to a few community organizations. I'm not begrudging that. That's great. This felt very different to us. We were trying to do something that supported nonprofits in a way that was different and turned the decision-making power over to folks in the community.
Yeah.
So that these organizations now that we've been working with, these 11 organizations can say, hey, this community just decided that we need to be here forever.
Yeah.
So go leverage that. Like, how do you sell that? How do you leverage that? Because it wasn't the Children's Foundation that decided. It wasn't Bill and Lisa Ford that decided. It truly was this community that said, these 11 organizations, they have to be here as long as that train station is. So we've been coaching them, supporting them, providing them additional resources for the last 6 months. We're wrapping up 6 months of cohort learning and training and coaching with them later this month. But that's been super motivating to watch them.
Yeah. That's very cool. Now, will they all be housed inside Michigan Central Station?
So they're doing we've done some trainings at Michigan Central. Some of them, there's more natural fits to what's going on at the station and at the book depository. They've all got their own office space. They're not moving into the station, but they're plugging into what's happening in that ecosystem over there.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to something that you said that really jumped out to me that I want to acknowledge is I don't think it's normal in leadership. And it's back actually when you were in City or Detroit. As a leader of that organization, deciding that the organization has reached a level where they don't need you anymore, but also healthy enough to do that and also communicate that to the team. I feel like that's not a normal thing for a leader to do, right? And I'm curious where you learned that skill, where you acquired that skill, because there's a level of abundancy in that. And openness that I think we often miss in leadership. And I'm curious how that all came about.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the catalytic moment that made that light bulb go off. I think it was just always trying to grow and learn and evolve my leadership. I can think of a few things. One of my mentors is Philip Fisher, who has a saying, who always reminds us we're mortal, but these entities we lead are perpetual. It's like, you got to figure out a way. Almost the most important thing you have as a leader is to figure out a good succession plan.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to work with a consulting agency called the Bridgespan Group. And we actually worked on succession planning, and they helped us develop a culture of being really open about succession planning at all levels of the organization. So it takes some of the fear out of those conversations for everyone across the organization, because I think sometimes people don't want to talk about their next step.
Yeah.
If for them, they don't see it within the place that they are because they're worried that that's going to lead to some, adverse employment decision by their boss, or they'll be treated differently. We very intentionally created a culture where everyone talked about their next step, whether it was within the organization or it meant somewhere else. And then, in this work as leading nonprofit organizations, the leader sometimes is supposed to have, you're a leader in the community, right? You're out there, you're sort of building your own personal reputation, but you really have to be cognizant of how that sort of personal equity you're building up is getting deposited back in the organization that you're leading, because it can be easy to, think about all the places you are, all the things you're being invited to, and forgetting that the purpose is to benefit the organization. And I think one of the ways to remind yourself of that is like, how am I setting this place up beyond me? So that it doesn't be, the two don't become so intertwined where people can't ever imagine the organization without the leader in charge.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. So I want to go on a different tack, and I'm curious, there's a lot going on in the world these days. What is bringing you the most joy today? Couple
things. I mean, one, we're in the first week of summer. My kids are home. It's finally warm here. We're gonna be heading up to the Upper Peninsula tomorrow for the long weekend. Just time with family. My oldest is starting high school next year, so
wow. Okay.
it's like, I don't know, all of a sudden it feels like the finish line is in sight for her, which my wife is mourning a little bit, I think. I'm like, we still got 4 years, and then she's still our kid forever. But, I think I have appreciation for time with family this summer. I would include today's conversation in what I've had a couple times over the last month, which is just new experiences with people that I like. And I think that's how friendships deepen, when you just do new stuff together. So appreciate the opportunity to have a new experience with someone that I've always enjoyed more limited interactions with. And now we get to look back forever and say, hey, remember when we did that podcast together? Thanks, Brendan. It's such a time of uncertainty, especially, I'd say in so many industries, especially in social change, social impact type work. There's questions of federal funding, pauses to federal funding, uncertainty around a budget. I think many organizations are feeling that. We are trying at the Children's Foundation with our grant making, we are providing funding and gap funding to the organizations that we've supported that are facing these kind of issues. So I'm sensitive to the uncertainty and fear that's out there. I'm also seeing amazing people that are leading in spite of an absolute storm that they are facing. And I'm reminded of a quote that a friend shared with me once recently, which is that we need those people because our torchbearers are most important when it's dark out. And I'm watching these people lead organizations that are literally being named in, certain publications, or they are really in the crosshairs because of the work they do supporting LGBTQ population or commitment to racial equity, and watching leaders stand up and say, I'm still leading powerfully in this moment. I'm like, if they're in, I'm in, right?
Yeah.
So that's some of the things bringing me joy and inspiration these days.
I love that. Someone carrying the torch is most important when the lights go out.
That's right.
That is very cool. Well, I can't think of a better note to end on than that. So, Andrew, so very much appreciate your time today and this conversation and all that you're doing for the city of Detroit, for the Children's Foundation, the nonprofits in our area. So it's very inspiring.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. And that was Andrew Stein. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. It was a real pleasure having Andrew here in the office and having that conversation. If you did enjoy the conversation, please consider sharing this with a friend. Click share, like, comment, rate us. It'll help us get spread around and the word of enthusiastic life spread around the community. So again, if you can share it, like it, comment, rate us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or YouTube or wherever you are hopefully enjoying this conversation. So thank you again for joining us and look forward to talking with you again next week.